Hey guys, recording my video here for Unit 2. This is the notes over the Texas's Road to the Revolution. Okay, so when we say the Road to Revolution, what we're talking about is the build up, not the actual fighting of the revolution. We're not going to get into many battles. There'll be a few skirmishes here and there, but we're not talking full-blown revolution yet. We're talking political tension, more and more tension between Anglo settlers and the the Mexican government building up in Texas until eventually, boom, full blown revolution. But we'll get there. All right. So Texas under Mexican rule. That's what we're at. We're talking Texas as a part of Mexico. So 1824, Mexico wrote a constitution. It's the Constitution of 1824. It's really well known. And the thing that it sets up is a states' rights government. And what that means is that, here highlighted in green, limited power to the central government. The states have rights, they have a lot of power. This division of power is called federalism. And what that means is there's powers that the federal government has, the government in Mexico City, and then there's powers that the states have, and they shared those powers. Some powers overlap, some powers are completely separate. Bottom line, the states have a lot of power to say no to the federal government. Federal government says, hey, you're going to raise taxes. States are like, not feeling it. So there's some things that they can do to, be like separate of the federal government. Now, most Tejanos, most Texans, and U.S. settlers, and most states of Mexico support the Constitution of 1824. Okay, they're looking at it, they like it that way, and this is a big political issue going on throughout Mexico. Mexico's going to have a little mini revolution against its president, and another guy's going to step in here based on this Constitution of 1824. So really important that you understand what the Constitution of 1824 brought to Mexico and Texas as part of it, okay? Because this is going to be a sticking point in the future. All right, so Coahuila y Texas, and I know Spanish-speaking students, I apologize to you for butchering that pronunciation. So please feel free to correct me in class publicly. Let the ridicule begin. All right, so 1825, per the Constitution, Texas excuse me, Texas as a region. So Texas is, part of Mexico. They wanted to stick it with Coahuila. And the reason they wanted to put that together in 1825 is because Texas kept getting more and more populated by Anglo settlers. And they were concerned, Mexico, the Mexican government, is concerned that Texas is going to be too independent, too Anglo, too much like America. No, we're going to put that under the power of Coahuila, and they're going to manage the area that is Texas and Coahuila together so that true Mexican citizens born in Mexico, Spanish descendant kind of Mexican citizens will be able to control that area politically. Big highlighted in red there. It's a political subdivision. It's not its own thing. Okay. So that's this basically making one giant state of the inhabited two states there. Now, slavery is an issue. One of the biggest issues to separate U.S. settlers and the Texas Mexican government, excuse me, between Texas, those U.S. settlers, and the Mexican government is slavery. It's kind of a hot button issue. Mexico doesn't like slavery. They look at slavery as this bad thing that was done to some of their ancestors. They don't want to continue it. But the Texans, the Anglo-Texans, those coming from America, they're coming from America to Mexico for cheap land to where they can start their plantation and have their slaves and be this southern plantation owner. So that's a big issue for these Southerners if they're going to not have slavery. And it's a big issue for Mexico because they don't want to have slavery. So 1820s, the government is restricting slavery, but remember, it's a states' rights government. 1824, so basically, Texans ignore it. Um, now, in when Coahuila y Texas starts to limit it in 1820, though, that's a different story. But still, Texans ignore it. Several Texans, including Stephen F. Austin, are opposed to slavery, but felt it was necessary to keep the economy moving in the right direction. Listen to that again. They're opposed to slavery. They know it's bad, but they feel like they should do it more for money than anything else. Oh, that does not make it any better. Why people feel like that's an important thing to say about slavery and Stephen F. Austin? We'll talk about that in class. What do you think about why they would say something like that? Stephen F. Austin said it was bad, but it was okay to do for money. Oh, that doesn't make it any better in my opinion. We'll have that discussion in class. So think about that and be ready to talk about it maybe as a warm up. All right, so in 1827, remember this is after the Constitution of 1824 now, slavery is outlawed. Coahuila y Tejas doesn't have to do it if they don't want to. And there's not a lot of pressure coming in this area to end slavery. 1829, President Vicente Guerrero issued a decree ending slavery, no more slavery. So all of this is raising that tension level over slavery. So now we get to the law of April 6, 1830. Tehran, this guy right here, okay, he is a general. He is sent by President Vicente Guerrero to Texas to check out Texas. What's going on in Texas? And they go and they look and they find that Texas is way, way too Anglo. There are too many Americans. There's too much American goods coming in across the border that's not being taxed. There's too much trade with America that's just free trade, not, no way, can't do that. Let's not have that. Because Mexico's not making any money. They're definitely not getting import taxes on this, and that's an issue. So they ban U.S. immigration. They make it illegal for Texans to bring in more slaves. Now, think about that. Your plans for bringing your family, your plans for bringing your slaves and starting your new plantation, canceled. That would raise tensions quite a bit, especially if you've moved here and already invested time and effort and money. Mexico hoped this is going to increase Mexico's control over Texas, but it's really just going to raise tensions. So much so that eventually there's going to be some conflicts. Okay, so Anahuac, 5 W's here: who, what, when, where, when, why. Bottom line, hundreds of troops stationed in Texas. They're trying to enforce that law of April 6, 1830. They're basically sending more and more troops in. That's just increasing the amount of opportunities for skirmishes between Anglo-Texans and Mexican soldiers. So at Anahuac, it's this big trade hub. There's a rebellion made up of townspeople led by a couple of brothers of a man who got arrested. Tensions were rising between Texans and Mexican officials, tax issues, all sorts of stuff was going on there that was frustrating the locals. And it's an important trade route, immigration point. There's a lot going on. It's right there on the Trinity River, Galveston Bay area. And in 1830, after the law of April 6, 1830 is passed, basically the import taxes, the control trade, all of this, as well as the arresting of several Texans who are breaking these new rules, raises the tensions too much, and people begin to fight. And eventually, this skirmish will be put down. But there's also a battle of Valesico during the the minor exchange of gunfire at Anahuac, the people are upset. They're marching through town. There's a little bitty skirmish, and then this is prior to some other resolutions and some other things we'll get into here in a minute. Some guys left to go get a cannon in the town of Rosario. So they run over, they're like, we're going to go get that cannon. We're going to teach them a lesson. Let's go. Now, they're unaware that, of the resolutions that are coming up. They're unaware that the conflict at Anahuac is over. And as they're heading back, they reach Valesico, and the Mexican officials in Valesico are like, whoa, 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 whoa. Where are you going with that cannon? And they're not letting them pass. And then a little battle ensues at the town of Valesico. It's basically the Mexican army ran out of ammunition, and surrendered to Texan colonists, fills the Texan colonists' heads full of bravado. But by this time, cooler heads have prevailed, and the Turtle Bayou resolution comes out. Now, that's that resolution that we were talking about. The idea there is that the 150 townspeople who opposed the Anahuac action, who have opposed this violence, are like, wait a minute, we are really stepping toes across the line here. The Mexican government is going to come down on us hard if we don't say, hey, we need to say the right things politically or this could go bad. So they write this resolution up. This resolution basically says it's not a rebellion against the government, but they're defending the rights under the Constitution of 1824. They're basically saying, no, 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 the Constitution of 1824 is what we're defending our rights under, and we're loyal to the government, and moreover, we're loyal to Santa Anna, not Bustamante. Okay? Santa Anna, by this time, famous dude who will be famous later at the Alamo, right? He's leading a revolt. So check it out. He's leading a revolt against Bustamante. He's elected president in 1833 and basically is saying to everybody that we're going to go back to the Constitution of 1824. And, it's all going to be good. We're going to go back to the Constitution of 1824, states' rights government. Everybody's going to be happy. Bustamante is losing out because he took over and said, we're not going to have the Constitution of 1824. Too bad. So now we move forward to what's going to happen. So Santa Anna is elected president of Mexico. Texans are hoping he's going to go back, like he said, to the Constitution of 1824, enforce, the Federalist principles, giving Texas strong local control. The other thing they hope they're going to do is they're going to continue to allow U.S. immigration, make Texas a separate state, its own state, where basically Texans would be able to do whatever they want. They wouldn't be controlled by Coahuila. They could, do their own thing, especially slavery, and exempt Texans from customs duties and provide lands for schools. So these are the things that they're hoping that Santa Anna will do, and they're saying so, hey, go back to the Constitution of 1824 during their conventions, their meetings to say, what are we going to do in 1832 and 1833? These are two meetings they're going to have. Now, we'll talk about what happens with those two meetings, okay? Now, at the second convention in 1833, well, the first one, basically, they got all their stuff together. They sent their demands to San Antonio, and San Antonio government was like, we're not even going to pass that on. Don't even bother. Go away with your demands. So afterwards, they go back to their convention, 1833. They have another convention, and at that convention, Austin is elected to take the demands straight to Santa Anna in Mexico. Okay, so basically he goes down there, and in October. They're very frustrated. Um, the bottom line is they're getting their demands straight to the government, and as the title says, eventually Austin's going to get arrested. And it kind of goes like this. Austin gets there. He's finally able to meet with Santa Ana after literally months of delay. Austin keeps getting put off. He's trying to go through the rigmarole. I mean, you're trying to see the president. And that's a difficult thing to do. And you don't get a lot of time with the president here in the United States today. If you got 10 minutes of the president's time, that is a boatload of time. You don't know who gets that amount of time with the president. It's insane. So you don't get a lot of time with the president. It's hard to get to see the president. So basically, Austin passes on all these demands, and Santa Ana's like, sure, we'll grant all those demands except Texas being its own state. So Texas can't have its own independent control from another Mexican state. Austin, it's like, okay, return to Texas, but only problem is he's arrested on his way back. There was one problem. Austin had written a letter prior to basically saying, go ahead and start forming a state government. That turns out after Santa Ana says, nope, no separate state, that turns out to be treason. And Austin is arrested for treason. He's in prison for years. They're never really giving him a trial. He's just kind of put in jail for challenging the Mexican government, or it's not really called treason. They don't like come out with some charges he can face in court. They just keep him arrested for a long time. Now, Austin is going to get sick in prison. He's eventually going to be let go. He's going to show up in Texas. By that time, he's too old and too sick to play a major role in the revolution, but we will get there. So, some things to think about: what you learned, Turtle Bayou Resolution, what led to it, why is it important, what was the impact of the Constitution of 1824? There go the dogs. There's a squirrel out in the backyard. So these are some important things to remember. Then some wrap up. What role did the regulation of trade play in growing conflict? Basically, the regulation of trade was a big stressor for the Texans. It was the wide open world of trade. No taxes, can do whatever I want, trade with whoever I want. But all of a sudden, there comes some regulations and some taxes and some angry Texans. How did Santa Ana's decision to set aside the Constitution of 1824 create centralist government affect Texas? Basically, that's the whole reason they supported him. They wanted that Constitution of 1824 and freedom to be their own state and have and set their own rules, and bam, Santa Ana goes completely 180 degrees on that and makes some Texans incredibly mad. So then the last question, how do you think problems facing young nation like the Republic of Mexico affected its policies towards Texas? Basically, there's a lot of political struggle going on in Mexico. People trying to fight for power and dominance, and Texas trying to break away or become independent, or even just become its own state and flaunt the rules that the new guy is setting out. They don't have patience for it. All right, so we will talk more about this in class, but that's just a quick rundown of it. Take your notes on this. I will publish this PowerPoint on Blackboard as well, so you can go through and take notes, but watch the video, then go through and take notes so you've got a good idea of what went on. Have a good one, guys.